Hello, Nets fans. Welcome to the Brooklyn Buzz. 112-102 lost for the Nets tonight on Black Friday. Unfortunately, Nick Fay, what were your thoughts, early impressions?
Jack, it was it looked like they ate too much on Thanksgiving. Lackadaisical effort, just not a lot of energy. Offense, they're able to kind of stay in it. But overall, there was just a sloppy game, not a lot of extra effort defensively, not the small details, similar to what we saw in Dallas. And then the turnover battle, they lost that 18-7. One thing that really stuck out too, Minnesota had 15 steals. So just like a lot of lazy plays with the ball, bad passes, some miscommunications, just carelessness with the basketball.
Yeah, also, guys, forgot to mention netsrepublic.com, OTGbasketball.com, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, Dash Radio, YouTube. Find it all those places. Nick, um, did they just have too much turkey? What were there any positives to take? D'Lo, obviously, we had a bit of a chat about him off wax. We are slightly worried about him. I remember talking about him on the last episode, saying how if games where he's sort of averaging 15 and 5 and not doing the best shooting, if that's his worst games, then that's good. But then he puts up a single-digit performance shooting 2 of 10 from the field.
Yeah, not to mention only 5 assists and 4 turnovers. He definitely just was not in the game. Like the focus wasn't there. Minnesota pretty much locked him up. He wasn't getting in the paint with ease. And it's just like he wasn't super aggressive. It's like they took him out of his game early and he kind of just fell back. And defensively, he had a couple issues too. He didn't do a great job preventing Minnesota guards from getting in the paint. We saw, Spencer Dinwiddie do a better job when he came in. So not one of D'Angelo's best games, maybe one of his worst games of the season.
What kept us in it, Nick? Because it seemed like, despite the fact that it was a 10-point loss, there were moments where the Nets could have easily taken the lead at times.
The bench came in and they put in some good effort. Right away, the starting lineup, I think, is an issue, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, that could use a change. But, when Kenny brought in RHJ, Spencer Dinwiddie, DeMarre Carroll, you saw the energy change. Dinwiddie, 18 points, DeMarre, 13, 12 for Shabazz, and 9 for Rondé. You saw some nice juice from the bench. They kind of got things going. And, offensively, the Nets weren't terrible. There just wasn't a ton of great effort. It's not like Minnesota played a great game. It's just the Nets played, a worse game, and they just weren't on their A game. The focus, the engagement just wasn't there.
Yeah, and I think that's what you need more than anything. I think seeing Nets Daily post out, the fact that it was a midday game, isn't any excuse. When you're paid to play basketball for a living, you should be able to play it, rain, hail, or shine, no matter where you are in the world, especially if you're getting paid those big bucks. And the fact it was a loss at home was a little bit disappointing too. But talking
I
about
think it
that
was
bench,
Minnesota's first road win.
and that's disappointing because, I put that when I did my preview for netsrepublic.com, I was genuinely optimistic about our chances because, when we look back to the game where Karis LeVert got injured against Minnesota, the Nets kept it, around this sort of mark as well. And, the emotional toll was the main thing that probably kept them out of it. So no excuses for tonight's game. So it was just a worse performance. But talking about those starters and those bench players, Nick, I put out a piece for OTDbasketball.com advocating for a lineup change. Jared Dudley will be taken out for a guy like RHJ or DeMarre Carroll. What do you think? Do you agree, or do you think that needs to happen sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I think the starting lineup needs a change. Not just the power forward position. I think they probably need to sub out either Harris or Crabbe because it looks like they need to have a second ball handler in there. I honestly think it probably should be something like D'Angelo, Dinwiddie, Crabbe, RHJ and Allen, or, swap RHJ for Carroll. I think Harris will be able to handle coming off the bench a little bit more, and he'll kind of be able to attack a little bit more with his drives. We're not going to see a ton from that from Crabbe regardless. So I think there needs to be a change, and I think it might help to get Dinwiddie in there and then stagger him in D'Lo's minutes and play them, with Shabazz. I think 2 ball handlers on the floor will really help the Nets because the offense just gets so perimeter oriented sometimes, and it's easy to defend. As long as the other team's putting in the effort, it's not like the Nets are getting to the rim and forcing the refs to make calls.
Yeah, that's true. And I think you see from like tonight's game where D'Angelo struggled and how has worked so much better most of this season with another ball handler out there. But Shabazz Napier, Nick, had a pretty nice game looking at the box score and some of his highlights.
Yeah, knock down threes. Shabazz came and gave that spark, that energy. He plays his game. He understands what he has to do. He did have a couple turnovers, a couple careless turnovers, just like everybody on the team was kind of out of it, but not a bad game from Shabazz. I mean, I really like what I saw from Dinwiddie. Other than that pull-up three on Karl-Anthony Towns when the game was within 4 minutes left, and Towns had 5 fouls. I think, Spencer should have drove there, but overall, he did a great job kind of getting things going and bringing energy to the team.
Yeah, and that's what we sorely needed on a day like today. What were Minnesota doing well, Nick, that sort of prevented the Nets from getting out of their game? You know, the Timberwolves, there's a new rejigged lineup. We didn't face guys like Robert Covington and Dario Saric the first time around. What sort of Minnesota outfit did we face and sort of was able to not necessarily dominate, but, dictate the game a little bit more?
I mean, Derrick Rose balled out. He really had no issue scoring on most of the Nets guards most of the game. 25 points, 11 of 17 from the field. Karl Anthony Towns, when he wasn't in foul trouble, was having a great game too. He really dominated that third quarter, and that's where Minnesota really picked things up. And then obviously the Nets almost made the comeback in the fourth. But overall, those two guys, it wasn't very hard for Minnesota offensively. Like the Nets' effort wasn't great. The energy wasn't great. They weren't making the second and third effort. The rotation wasn't there. So I just feel like it's not like Minnesota, like I said, was playing a great game. They just did a good enough job to win. They're also active defensively. Like I said, 15 steals, took advantage of the Nets' careless turnovers and whatnot.
Joe Harris played 34 minutes to lead the Nets with Spencer Dinwiddie with 30, Nick. He's now on Twitter, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
It's massive, massive news. But what did Joe Harris do well to earn those minutes?
Joe Harris started knocking down some three-point shots, which is always good to see. He did have a couple turnovers too, two turnovers, but he had some nice passes in there as well. Drive to the rim. We're gonna get with Joe Harris almost every single night. And tonight was no different. It's just nice to see him get his three ball, kind of start back to cooking.
Yeah, and the thing is, when we sort of compared to Crabbe on the last game, you didn't have any wavering confidence with a guy like Joe Harris being able to get it back. I think his streak of made threes in a game was ended the other night, but, he's obviously hit 4 tonight, so 4 of 10 from the field. You just don't lose that confidence with a guy like Joe Harris because he has that sort of solid, steady mentality that, a guy like Alan Crabbe could learn from, but Alan Crabbe's still finding his feet. What did he 30 minutes for hits tonight, 3 of 9 from the field, 3 of 9 from 3, Nick, 4 of 10 from the field. Any signs, good signs, bad signs from Alan Crabbe?
Yeah, he didn't look bad. He didn't look bad. He didn't look as good as he did against Dallas, but it looks like he's starting to find his confidence, his rhythm. He's kind of fitting better in the offense right now. So I think positive signs for Crabbe to come. I feel a lot more confident after the last 2 games than I did, the first chunk of the season.
That's fair. That's fair. Kenneth Faried saw some time, Nick. 6 minutes on the night. So obviously there wasn't much junk time going on. What caused his appearance into the night?
Third quarter, when Minnesota was really starting to get their things going, and the Nets didn't have a ton of energy. Saw Kenneth Faried in there, and to be honest, he really didn't show anything that he should get more minutes. Defensively, wasn't great. Didn't really help much on when Rondé was on Towns and whatnot, rotating over. And offensively, if he's not really catching an oop, he's not doing much. But I think Kenny was just looking to get some spark.
Would you have preferred Rodion's heading out there?
Yeah, I would have, but I believe Rodion's was with the G League and not at this game. I'm not 100% sure though on that.
Okay, yeah, that probably does make sense because looking at the box score and stuff, it doesn't say him as a DNP coach's decision or any of those sort of things. But Nick, any last sort of thoughts about this one before we log off?
I feel like, there was some positive things to take. Jared Allen didn't have a great game either, got into foul trouble in this one like he did against Dallas. But there's positives. The Nets just need to kind of mesh everything together, and these guys need to kind of have good moments together instead of all in, separate games. So moving forward, I think there's still pieces there to win games. They just need to really gel, and I think the starting lineup has to change.
I would probably advocate for that as well, Nick. And if D'Lo continues, this is probably a last sort of hot takey question to end on that I'm sure the listeners will love. Spencer Dinwiddie is due for that contract extension very soon. We obviously have D'Angelo Russell due for his contract extension at the end of the season and restricted free agency. Is it getting more and more likely that Spencer is becoming a more likely candidate to stick around with the Nets beyond this season?
It's still really tough to say. And like D'Angelo's doing this thing where he's like super hot, super cold, where he's having these real good all around games and having bad games. You have a better idea what you're going to get with Spencer. So I guess it would probably be safer to say he'll be back with the Nets at the right price, where there's still, I think, a little fear with D'Angelo where someone coming in here and offering him a big contract and the Nets not wanting to match. So I think it's a safer bet. I don't feel like either are going to get extended during the season. I think the cap space is too valuable unless like Spencer really goes on a tear and they want to make sure he's locked up. But I think at this point it just makes more sense to kind of wait it out and see what happens with, the free agents in the summer.
Completely fair, and probably some wise words that Sean Marks, I'm sure, will heed himself. But guys, you know where to find us: OTGBasketball.com, NetsRepublic.com, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, Dash Radio, YouTube. Nick, I don't know how you do that off the top of your head. I'm running out of breath. You do that on the outlet as well. Man, you're a master. But guys, as always, thank you, Nick. Thank you as always. Happy Black Friday. Get some good deals for Christmas, guys.
All right, Jack, always a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for listening.